And we are live on this fourth hour of the show. We're going to get into the latest in the litigation concerning the recount, the election attempt to actually count the legitimate votes, which is a very important process, much to the chagrin of the mainstream media, which has it's decided to give itself, to anoint itself with the power of declaring the next president. That's not the case. The power is with the electors. And the recounts are going to continue. The litigation is going to continue for the next few days and indeed weeks. But of course, Biden has basically come out, and his transition team, which is basically asserted power, as they said they would do before the election, to give Biden that legitimacy of power, have come out and said that lockdown 2.0 for the United States is on its way. Interesting fact, the earliest known use of the term lockdown was in a 1973 Fresno Bee newspaper article, and it referred to prisoners being kept in their cells after a knife attack. So the very origin of the term lockdown was in the context of an unruly population being kept behind bars by the authorities. Really makes you think, really makes you think. And today we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the Great Reset, which again is not a conspiracy theory. It's an open plan being proudly promulgated and promoted by the global elite, by Davos, by the World Economic Forum. Headline up on Breitbart from James Delingpole, who I'm hopefully going to interview here in the near future. Only Donald Trump can save us from the Great Reset. Now, this is a plan that's been in the works at least since 2016. This is not something that was just invented off the back of the convenient Chinese coronavirus outbreak. They've been planning for this for at least 4 years. Now, the phrase for the Great Reset, which they're using in the halls of global financial elite residences, is Build Back Better, which of course is basically a code phrase for rebranding, rejuvenating, rejigging their failed New World Order, which again, they're trying to reintroduce off the back of COVID hysteria. And I go back to this survey time and time again, because it exemplifies how much concentrated power the mainstream media has to influence people, to re-educate people, to brainwash people into becoming so hysterical that they believe this moral panic. They believe that this virus, which has a 99.98% survival rate chance amongst people below the age of 75 without comorbidities, is way more dangerous than it actually is. They did a poll in the United States which found that the average American, and some thought it was a higher number, but the average American thinks that coronavirus has killed over 30 million Americans. Similar case across the Western world. In the UK, the average Brit thinks that coronavirus has killed 5 million people in the UK. It's actually killed less than 50,000. Why do they believe that? Because they've been hysterically indoctrinated with this COVID-19 hysteria, and this is a long-term plan. And Delingpole talks about it in his article. And it's basically, as I said, a rebranding of this global neo-feudalist system. They're talking about nobody having property. They're talking about redistribution of wealth. But then when you look at how the wealth has already been redistributed since the start of the pandemic back in March, as the lockdowns were introduced in the Western world, who has it benefited? Hasn't benefited the little people, really, has it? It's benefited giant transnational corporations time and time again. That's not redistributing the wealth, even if you believe in that socialist utopian paradigm. Small businesses are going bust, mass unemployment, mass economic destruction across the Western world, and who benefits? Well, that's the headline of this Breitbart article. Who benefits? Amazon booms as lockdown crushes small business in Britain. Amazon, in the third quarter, has seen its profits triple to $6.3 billion. That's a 37% rise in sales globally. Why? because the only shops that are open are online. The only essential stores that you can go and visit to buy your food are the big box stores, are the big transnational corporations. In the UK, it's supermarkets like Asda, which is owned by Walmart, and Tesco, which again is another giant transnational corporation. Everybody else is going bust. So no, they're not redistributing the wealth. They're hoarding it, they're centralizing it for themselves. And that's what they plan to implement further if they get this great reset, which again is just about lowering everyone's quality of life, lowering everyone's economic standard, and saying that you will no longer be able to own property. They literally brag about that and talk about it in their own publications. Headline: globalist Klaus Schwab, world will never return to normal after COVID. In his book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, World Economic Forum globalist Klaus Schwab, who again is invested in all the vaccine production, by the way, asserts that the world will never return to normal, despite him admitting that coronavirus doesn't pose an existential threat. They admit basically that the hysteria is way overhyped, over-exaggerated, and it's deliberately done to scare people into going along with this agenda. What is the agenda? It's what they call a common pass. They brag about it. They show screenshots from this app that they're producing where it says before you're allowed to travel on airlines, you have to take the COVID PCR test, and eventually you have to take the vaccine. Oh, and by the way, it's not just international airline travel. Uber now literally has a thing where if you don't wear a mask and the driver reports it to central command, the next time you try to use Uber on your phone, they make you take a selfie wearing the mask. If you then get in the Uber without a mask for a second time, then your account is banned. So this all ties into the deplatforming, the social credit score that we've seen introduced in China, where the coronavirus pandemic originated, which again is based on the fact that it's not just your behavior, it's your friend's behavior. If you're being a good citizen and taking your vaccines and wearing your mask, that's all good and well. But then if your friend is flouting the coronavirus restrictions, well, then that also affects your social credit score. So it's this ominous, demon-like program of ostracizing people from their own communities, their own friends, if they misbehave. So again, it's about incentivizing the prisoners, guarding the other prisoners, and making them submit to the new rules. Very, very interesting, given the fact that, as we know, the same people behind the coronavirus pandemic hysteria, the World Economic Forum, NGOs, transnational corporations, the vaunted scientists, which are giving our governments this terrible advice that's proven wrong time and time again, were the same people behind the global warming panic of the past 2-3 decades. In fact, in 1993, the Club of Rome's co-founder, Alexander King, wrote The First Global Revolution, and he stated, quote, "The common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, famine, and the like would fit the bill." And what do we see once again? With the same people who were behind this hysteria, writing the IPCC UN reports, again, man is the enemy, we're the super spreaders, we need the technocratic global elite to tamp down on our freedoms, not just freedom of speech, but specifically freedom of mobility for this pandemic to go away. Very, very Machiavellian program that they've got running, and they openly admit to it. So we're going to go on to talk about that more in the second segment, also tie it into the social credit score, because of course we had the headline a few months ago, or for a few weeks ago actually, public humiliation, Hitachi develops fish bubble to enforce social distancing. So you're going to have an app connected to your phone, which is then linked into sensors in public buildings, in airports, in sports stadiums, wherever, where you have a 6-meter bubble projected around you. And if someone violates that, then you both get in trouble.